Hey Laura,
Hey, Matthew.
we're live.
Yes.
Uh, has something gone wrong there? I think. Okay, so all right. Well, apologies for the halting start there. Um, we seem to have had a small technical problem there with Laura's connection. So I'll do the speaking instead. My name's Matthew Revell. I work at Couchbase on the developer advocacy team here in the UK, and this hangout is all about what we're going to be releasing later in the year with Couchbase 4.0. So we've got the Couchbase 4.0 beta out right now, and we're joined today by Todd Greenstein from the product management team at Couchbase. Hey Todd, how you doing?
Hello, good afternoon, good morning for me.
Yeah, very early in the morning. Just let us know whereabouts you are and how early it is.
In Walnut Creek, California, it is 6 a.m., but I'm excited to talk about this, so
Cool.
great.
So Walnut Creek, probably best known to European people as of a certain age, as the home of CD-ROMs
Yes.
from the early 90s. Yeah, okay, so Laura's back with us. Hey Laura.
Hiya, folks. Sorry about that.
All right, so Laura, just tell us who you are and what your role is.
So I'm the developer community manager at Couchbase. I'm actively involved in getting the community excited about using Couchbase. I'm happily running the Couchbase user groups. And if you have any exciting questions, feel free to always ping me on Freenode on Couchbase. Tchaikovsky.
Great, super, thanks. Okay, so as I said, we're here to talk about Couchbase 4.0. So I suppose the first thing is this is Couchbase Server rather than Couchbase Mobile that we're talking about. But Todd, can you just tell us what the main highlights for Couchbase 4.0 are going to be?
Sure. The biggest thing to start with is while I'm still maintaining our single node type, we've basically come up with a new technology that we like to refer to as MDS, which is multidimensional scaling. And what's involved with that is our new query API, which, if you're familiar with Nickel, is our new query, next generation query language. And what that means is you're now able to scale in a way where you can have nodes that are dedicated to very specific services, such as query that we talked about, and in addition to that, our new secondary indexing technology. What that means from a developer perspective is completely new SDK support for query, for the ability to interrogate secondary indexes through the query API, and generally an improved experience for anything that where you typically would have problems building ad hoc type applications or things that required a high degree of selectivity. We've made that experience a lot easier for the developer now moving forward.
Great, thanks. We've got a few people on the who are watching now. So just to let you know, you can use the Q&A function in the Hangout. If you do have a question, then Laura will be bringing those to Todd and myself throughout the next few minutes while we do this. So please do feel free to ask any questions that you have about particularly Couchbase 4.0, but about Couchbase generally as well. And if you want to watch this again, if you're particularly interested, then this video will be on the Couchbase YouTube account pretty much straight away after we've done it. And if you want to catch it again, then we'll be doing this again at about 10 o'clock UK time tonight, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon West Coast American time. Okay, so Todd, the key things then it seems are okay. Multi-dimensional scaling sounds interesting from an operational point of view, but the key things to me from a developer point of view sound like Nickel and secondary indexing. So Nickel is a query language, right, as you described. Can you, if I was coming new to Couchbase and I didn't know anything about Nickel, what would you tell me?
So Nickel is our SQL language implementation, and what that means is if you're used to building things with SQL on other platforms as a language, now we have support for that. But that doesn't just mean a port over of the SQL language to a NoSQL platform. It's actually, we've added a lot of things that are specific to allow us to have better support for JSON and basically manipulation of documents, aggregations, things that allow you to specifically promote things in your query to first-class things in the results. One of the things that I like to talk about frequently when we discuss this is the ability to do joins. And in addition to that, we also have the ability to nest and unnest. And where that becomes incredibly powerful is, typically you spend a lot of time writing things that allow you to parse JSON within your application if you're doing things with projections in SQL. Now we give you that ability within the query language to actually define where things come within the predicate for your JSON result and in your projection. And that's a very powerful feature and something that when we've talked to customers about and within the beta program has been very successful so far.
Okay, so the key thing to me is that SQL was designed to work with normalized data in a relational database, and JSON is so far removed from being normalized.
Good question. Yeah.
So you mentioned nesting and so on. So how do you deal with that JSON specific stuff?
Yeah. So one of the things that within NoSQL you always hear is the word schemaless, and I've never liked that term. To me, there's always a schema, but what it means is that it's loaded within the document and it's carried within the document itself, and that it's flexible. And I prefer the term more dynamic schema or flexible schema. And when you think about that, that is a challenge when you're talking about a structured query language that's looking for very, very specific things in columnar fashion and tables and whatnot. So one of the things that we've spent a lot of time around is optimization and being able to query that and being able to interrogate that in an intelligent manner. Most of that nuance is performed for you. So as long as you're doing things where from in your typical query clause is within a specific bucket or specific range of documents, we've basically been able to optimize that, especially using our secondary indexing and primary index technology that also relies on secondary indexing in memory to give the developer just a really powerful, rich experience around that in general. So, yeah, one of the other big challenges with that was joins, something that early on when this process started, it's like when you look at other offerings that are out there for competing query APIs, most of them don't use a SQL type interface within the NoSQL world. And the reason for that, one, it's hard to do, and two, it's very difficult to implement things that developers want when they're using a structured query language like joins. And the fact that we've been able to include that and make it very efficient has been, it's been a very good experience so far.
Cool. I do have a question there from Stephen that you might be able to think about there, Todd. So,
sure.
Stephen, we still posed a question. There seems to be a lot of query languages, Couchbase, Cloudin, MongoDB, Tinkerpop. Do you see them converging at all?
Possibly. I mean, we've actually had a lot of interest with the Nickel language that we've developed. That's, I mean, granted, it is a SQL compliant language. It does have a lot of things that we've brought to it that are very specific to using within a NoSQL store, and that actually allow you to do some complex aggregations and things that are normally a challenge with other types of query APIs, and we have had some interest in porting this over to other type of platforms. But as far as a convergence within space within other query APIs, I don't foresee that, honestly. But I do see Nickel spreading elsewhere on other platforms.
Thanks.
Thanks, Todd. So, I mean, that raises an interesting question of how tied into the Couchbase model Nickel is. If it could be used elsewhere, obviously the implementation would be different. But language itself, has the philosophy behind designing Nickel been to create something, without sounding too cheesy, something for the world rather than just something for Couchbase?
Absolutely, and that's not a bad thing, because I mean, honestly, the secret sauce beneath what's happening is the secondary indexing technology. That's where our bread and butter is, and the fact that Nickel is able to make use of that in a very intelligent and very fast manner, is what gives us the advantage when you think about that. But certainly Nickel is something that, as I said, we've already seen a lot of interest in porting this elsewhere and being able to use this on other platforms. And I think, I mean, it speaks to the strength of what we've brought to the market, and also in addition to that, the fact that it is, I mean, it isn't highly specific to Couchbase in the language sense. What makes it really powerful and makes it very highly specific to Couchbase is the indexing technology and how that's manipulated. So.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about those indexes. So anyone who's familiar with Couchbase already, and going back to CouchDB, will be aware of views. Basically secondary indexes that you create by writing map functions and occasionally reduce functions as well. So to start with, how do these new secondary indexes differ from traditional Couch family views?
Good question. So typically, views in Couchbase has been a pretty robust API for us. What it's lacked is speed, and scalability has always been a challenge when the indexing workflow has been things come into the database, into memory, and then once they're persisted to disk, then they're basically updated in a MapReduce fashion to the secondary indexes. We improved that fairly substantially with the 3.0 release. We asynchronously changed the workflow so they were updated straight out of memory, but they were still living ultimately on disk. And each particular node within a cluster was responsible for all of the data in that particular index that it was managing. So you always had this scatter or gather operation every time you did a query, and every time that there was an update, and you had ranges and things like that. And if there was black spots with a node particularly goes down, there was the experience around that isn't optimal, whereas you can just basically have a black spot in the data that's returned for a particular view. So what we've done to improve that is we've built an in-memory secondary indexing strategy from the ground up, and it's completely native to Couchbase, and it makes use of also the DCP protocol that I was referencing, where it's updated straight out of memory. So whenever mutations or new data or anything happens within the system, asynchronously straight out of memory, we also update the secondary index or build the secondary index straight in memory. So now we're basically querying a single source in memory, which allows for really, really fast lookups. And it basically, the plan is for this, as we move forward, we'll also be supporting things like covering indexes. So you won't actually even need to hit the data store at all. If everything that you're looking for is specifically defined within the index, then a covering index will allow you to basically just grab the data straight from that index without ever having to hit the KV store.
Great. So, talking of indexing, then, what would the general strategy be? Because I imagine that if you run a query without creating indexes, it's going to be somewhat inefficient. So, do we yet have ideas? Considering it's still in beta, so we don't see much production usage of it. But do we have a good idea of when to create an index and so on?
Yeah, so one of the things that, so when you start with Nickel, one of the things that you need to do immediately is you need to have a primary index of some sort. And by building that, what we refer to in indexes as GSI, which is global secondary indexes, and that's also the keyword in Nickel for how they differentiate from using a view. Nickel will also work just fine using traditional views that we discussed earlier. It's just there's a fairly high degree of optimization when using these straight out of memory when using the global secondary indexes. One of the things is, I mean, as you start playing around with queries and you start looking at different, aggregations and sorting and things that you're, particularly interested in, it makes sense to start indexing those. And one of the things that you've been a big proponent of and how you model your data is also there's a strategy there for how you model and how you base your indexes in order to retrieve things in an efficient manner. Things that anytime you're talking about where you're doing a where clause and you don't want to traverse the entire data store, and you don't want to have things that we would refer to like as a table scan in the relational world, makes sense to use indexes there. And They're defined through the nickel interface, and they're very easy. To basically just create index, and there's not much nuance to it. One of the things that's really neat too is you're actually able to within the nickel language verify which particular indexes are online and what the state are. That's done through sys indexes, which is like it's a language reserved keyword and allows you to look and see what indexes you've actually defined previously and what their state is. So.
Okay, so taking a slightly different look at nickel then, from the developer point of view, writing pure nickel, as you've said, looks like SQL, but with some additional commands for the nature of JSON.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that the part of the work that we've done is bringing nickel into the SDKs, and I know that you work very closely with the SDK. So as a Java developer or a .NET developer, what would be my experience of nickel?
Yeah, so there's a couple of neat things there that are sort of converging at the same time as this release with Sherlock. The first one is the DSL, the domain-specific language that's happening in the Java client. So when you think of like a fluid API, basically now all of these keywords and verbs and things that we're used to using in SQL that are brought into nickel are now present within the fluid API. There's some great information on that on the website. Michael Nitschinger, that owns the Java project, has done some great blogging and great examples around that. And we've also got some webinars planned moving forward that we'll dive into this more in depth. But it's really intuitive. It's a great experience. Also from the .NET side, one of the things that when we started marching down this road with the query language early on is it's like we really need to have strong support for LINQ. And we have released the LINQ provider, and we've already gotten some community contributions to that, and it's been that's sort of the de facto standard in the .NET world, in my opinion, is supporting LINQ and having a LINQ provider allows you to have a really rich query experience in general for the developer. So if you're familiar with that and you're used to using that, that's something that we have here as well.
Great. I know you've done work on the Ottoman ODM for Node.js. Does that support nickel yet, or is that something?
It does. So one of the things within the fluid API doesn't really make a lot of sense from the Node world. So one of the things that is really common within Node is to have an ODM of some sort, and we've are rapidly approaching GA with our ODM, which is referred to as Ottoman. There's a great blog preview that we did on that where we kind of walk through a sample application that uses that. And what Ottoman does is it allows you to leverage whatever the best technology is available within Couchbase for indexing and also for querying. In a similar fashion, we've also have Spring Data support for within Java. And it's also nickel. It understands nickel. It knows how to speak nickel. It knows how to build these queries and indexes and leverage methods for you in the same way that the ODM does within the Node world. So it's pretty powerful. Spring Data's got a lot of momentum behind it. It's one of the standards out there, and we're actually doing a lot of work with the Spring group as we move forward. And we've got some sort of joint things planned within that space coming up in the next quarter.
Great, thanks. Now, a question I hear a lot, and I know that you don't work directly on the mobile team, but a question that I get a lot is, when will nickel come to mobile? And as far as I know, there's no immediate plans, but do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that the convergence on this is something that we're looking forward to, and it is on the product roadmap. As far as the immediate release within Sherlock, which is then what we refer to internally as Couchbase 4.0 for the GA, that support's not going to be there, but I would, in my opinion, I think it's going to make probably the next release of the product. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Okay, so outside of nickel, you mentioned multidimensional scaling, so having specific query and index node types as well as data nodes. But is there anything else in 4.0 that you think we should talk about now?
Yeah, one of the things that we're really excited about is security. We've had a lot of requests, a lot of customer sort of involvement with how the roadmap works for this, and a lot of things that are very specific to some of what our larger customers and our more security sensitive customers have requested. We've got full auditing support now for the administrative accounts. We've sort of improved the experience around what we're going to be doing with the roadmap for security moving forward, and we've laid the foundation for that now with things like LDAP and, like I said, auditing. So that's something we're really excited about. In addition to things that we've already discussed, there's a lot of optimizations and things that we've added within the product. We're actually moving forward with the subdocument API. You'll see that in the release following this 4.0 release. The groundwork for that has been laid out now. There's also, we've got some other really neat things that we're adding to the roadmap, and we've spent a lot of time in optimizing and cleaning up things for a better, experience all the way around and a more efficient, not to just throw things out in marketing terms, but we have improved the performance of the product and, the reliability, and you'll see a lot more things around in this space as we move forward from 4.0 and on. But obviously, Nickel is the the most important feature, and query, having that support in there is huge. I mean, it's big for us, but there is a lot of other optimizations and things that we've added to the products as we move forward.
Am I right in saying that multi-dimensional view querying, spatial querying, is something that's gone beyond kind of beta phase in 4.0?
Yes. So it is. Right now, the exclusive interface for that is the View API. There is plans as we move forward to actually integrate support for that into Nickel as well. Currently, the support for views, it is officially supported now. It's as you mentioned, it's been a sort of a beta project ongoing for several years, and now it is officially supported. There's some optimizations around that. The difference is you are using the View API when you interrogate that, whereas you're not using the Query API for Nickel when to leverage that currently.
Okay, and something you mentioned, the subdocument API, that piques my interest. So that sounds like basically querying or changing individual key value pairs within a JSON document. Is that what it is?
Correct. So one of the things that we've had requests for from customers is not having to send the entire document over the wire, both bidirectionally as we do updates, especially when we're doing things where we just want to add a specific field or change a specific field, and the subdocument API to Memcache that we've added allows you to do that. You'll see that approaching beta support very soon, and the next release of the product that will be officially supported after the 4.0 release.
Great. Okay, and we codenamed this release 4.0 Sherlock, and the next one's Watson, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, look, I think we've got a fairly good overview there of what's coming in 4.0, particularly Nickel. I think that something that particularly interests me is this idea that NoSQL was all about saying, okay, well, we can scale or we can give you uptime, but query is your problem now, and you handle that in the application layer. And actually, with Nickel, we're putting query back into the database. And I think
there's one last thing I'd like to just mention that it's really exciting for us. I mean, there's a lot of momentum around. Our Spark client is also coming to GA very soon, and that is something that we've tried to build a really rich experience around for the Java community in general. And I think you're going to see a lot more interest in that. We've just, and from what we've put out with developer previews, we've had several people pick that up and are using that currently. And I think you're going to see a lot more things around Spark in general. And we've spent a lot of time figuring out optimizations for things like, the shuffle. That's usually a huge problem for anyone that's using Spark in the past, and how you're efficiently co-locating data with particular Spark processes, and that's things that we've spent a lot of time to try and optimize. So I think you're going to see a pretty strong experience there as we move forward.
Great, and you can get both the Spark connector and the Couchbase 4.0 beta from couchbase.com. follow the links. They're fairly prominent, at least for the Couchbase 4.0 beta. And I'm guessing the Spark connector is on the SDK page for the Java client, is it?
Yes, there's especially we've got several blog entries that are referencing that as well, that sort of give you tutorials and walkthroughs. And same with also we have an officially supported Kafka connector as well, a producer as well as a consumer. So there's a lot of information as well on that. And both of those projects are stored in GitHub, and there's a lot of information within Couchbase Labs on how they work.
Great, thanks. So blog.couchbase.com and then the Couchbase Labs organization on GitHub. Todd, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Looks like Laura's dropped off with some network problems, but and also everyone who's watched this both now and on the video later, thanks a lot. And if you want to find out more about Couchbase, you want to ask any questions, then we're always there at forums.couchbase.com, and there's hash Couchbase on Freenode as well, if you want to do the IRC thing. But yeah, thanks very much, and well, see you around. Cheers.
Thank you very much.